All right, here we are. So, yeah, welcome everybody. I'm here. I'm Jeremy Siegel, Director of Strategic Partnerships at Pro Sound Effects. And I'm here with Andy Kantos, who runs the sonic branding agency HiMidLow. And we are here today to talk about the sound of your brand. So, like how to use sound to build a connection with your audience and why sound is important to brands and companies and teams.
Yeah.
So yeah, awesome. So why don't you kick us off? Give us a little quick hit about your background,
Sure.
what your role is, and how your company is set up, and the types of projects you're working on.
Sure. So, hi everyone. I'm Andy Kantos. So I'm the creative director and founder at HiMidLow. So what HiMidLow is, we're a sonic branding agency here in LA, and we specially work with mid-sized to large level agencies. It's a bit of a subscription service for like an all-encompassing mix, sound design, editorial. And then we also work with larger scale brands to do things like sonic identity. We'll also do big sound design for large scale campaigns and all sorts of things like that. So it's a lot of fun. The team is very small, pretty much just me most of the time. And then I hire out specific people for specific needs within the process. So I might need a particular composer to put something together. I might need a sound designer to put something together that's really unique. So all of these people, all of these relationships that I built over the last 20 years in Los Angeles, I get to bring to you in your projects.
Awesome. So in your 20 years of experience,
Sure.
boil that down for me. Why does sound matter for companies and for
Man.
brands?
So sound connects people to your brand in a way that no other medium can. It's deeply emotional. It's deeply connected to trust, relationships. It's rooted in the deepest parts of our mind. Visuals can tell a story and convey a story, but sound actually makes you feel the story, it makes you believe the story. When we see sound, it's right in front of us, or when we see visuals, it's right in front of us. It can win awards. It's a big, powerful thing. But sound, on the other hand, when it's done well, nobody notices it's there, but you feel it, you identify, you lean in, you connect. And when you look at the bigger picture, sound is something that brings humanity together. It's tribal. It's from our earliest years when we were on the savannah. We're dancing around, we're connected to each other, we tell stories through it. It's just something that no other medium can do.
Yeah, that's powerful. It reminds me of a conversation I was having with some folks on LinkedIn recently about how people can commonly disengage with the visual aspects of whatever they're watching. People have devices in their hands at all times and are not really paying attention, but the sound of it, the dialogue, the music, the sound design kind of paces people's journey through a piece of content and can draw them back into it, and keep them cued as to what's happening in a story, even if they're literally not looking at anything.
That's right.
Yeah.
One of the amazing things about what we do, sound allows people to kind of get pushed and pulled throughout a story. Sometimes it's not all about like these big heavy effects that are kind of pushing the story along. Sometimes if we pull the sound back, it makes the audience focus back in. So like you're talking about losing that attention. Well, if I have something playing on a screen in the kitchen and all of a sudden the sound cuts out, well, why did the sound cut out? Like you feel that. And so you walk back into the kitchen and look down at your phone and you're like, yeah, it's still playing. It's just a quiet moment. And it makes you lean in and engage. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. So, talk more about how does sound influence our perception and behavior when it comes to taking in content, but just generally speaking as well.
Sure. A big fact that I read the other day showed that a 1.2% increase in ad spend towards sound actually gets people basically gives you a 23% higher ROI on your end product. What causes that, right? It's buyer behavior builds trust. We become more trusting when we hear sounds that are consistently repetitious. We know who's talking to us. We know the brand's, voice. We know their character. And it really gives us an opportunity to kind of, how do I want to say it? Sound is one of those things that just really just I've said it again and again, it's kind of an ethereal thing, but trust, right? So, um, another little factoid the other day is that, um, music and sound are number 1 and number 3 in the most relatable parts of a brand. So if you take all their different elements, all their different, corporate identity things, such as like logo, slogans, characters, and whatnot, sound is the number 1 and number 3 most relatable thing. So really that's kind of
Yeah.
the core. I think I answered your question, maybe not.
Yeah. No, you're good. Yeah, I'm trying to think because we all know there's like iconic sounds that brands have. There's like,
Sure,
the
sure.
Taco Bell like dung sound,
Right.
which we know comes from a Yamaha DX7. There's some great
Exactly.
stuff out there on that. Like Sonic logos. I think everybody's really familiar with that stuff. Like
Sure, sure.
talk about why it's important to consider having an iconic logo like that.
Right.
And then also on the other side, how can you put a Sonic stamp on your work without, having, like an earworm, a really like kitschy, iconic sort of Sonic logo?
Right. Well, there's so many things you can do, right? So it can be just the sound you're playing at your location, right? So if you're a retail store, what are the sounds that people hear when they come in? Is it quiet? Is it comfortable? There's things you can do sonically without spending a lot of money, or even having that catchy earworm. It's just about the emotional state you put the customer in when they show up.
Yeah.
But sonic logos are such a massive part of the process. You listed the Taco Bell dung, and that sound is so powerful because I was talking with somebody about this the other day. It's part of a library as well. And so, that sound has found its way into so many films.
Right.
And you're immediately going to think of Taco Bell when you hear it. You just can't control it.
It's Pavlovian at this point.
It is.
Yeah.
You start craving tacos. But then, on the other side, you have, the McDonald's, da, 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 da. You have Netflix. Da-dum. There's so many Sonic, pieces of Sonic identity that immediately, again, take you right into what you can expect, what the brand is going to offer you. So that it is really important to do, and you don't need to have something that's like earth-shattering, game-changing. It's about creating smaller things like voice. Who's gonna be the voice actor for this campaign? Who's gonna be the voice actor for our brand? The Geico Gecko. Like, everybody connects to that, and they changed the voice somewhere through that process, and they brought that guy right back because it immediately threw us when it wasn't the same person. So it's things like voice, it's things like ambient sounds and sound effects, it's things like your Sonic logo, it's musical choices, it's tempo, it's even in the edit, how quickly are we cutting things. All of these are like how brands can show the customer who we are, what our values are, and really get them to consistently make you stand out versus your competitors. So
right,
it's pretty powerful.
And never forgetting the fact that, especially in like an advertising environment, a lot of times people are not actually paying attention to visually to what's happening on screen or whatever this is, or maybe it's even a radio ad. So sound is doing kind of an outsize heavy lift to actually make viewers engage with the content, and to I think what we're talking about is to immediately identify with the brand that is coming at them with this. Right.
Yeah. And in that vein, I just want to hit on another little piece of interesting study. There was a study done in 2018 that found that advertising that was actually lower in level, lower in volume, customers actually found less trustworthy, which
really
is mind blowing, because we all complain about, why are these ads so loud? Well, then you think, okay, I'm going to give the customer what they want, and I'm going to do the opposite. And people think that you're trying to hide something. So, there are definitely well-researched reasons for why these things are the way they are.
Yeah. That's interesting timing too, because I feel like that's right around when heavy debate started happening about like loudness, parameters and what's allowed, because you'd be watching something kind of something dramatic or whatever on Netflix or on something with it with an ad component, and then all of a sudden the ad comes on and it like blows you away.
Right. Yeah, there are like, so every network, every streaming platform has delivery standards, right? But every now and again, something will slip by, and none of us are quite sure why.
Right.
Even in the digital age, but yeah, absolutely. There were wars about this, the loudness wars. I think it was literally titled the Loudness Wars.
Yeah.
And everyone was just trying to figure out how we can standardize this, because we moved away from analog into a digital world.
Yep.
The rules should be, I mean, yeah, we have zero headroom now. I mean, getting a little technical, but we can make things as loud or as quiet as we want.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's such an amazing thing. I could rant on this for days.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the loudness wars, I think also, if you think about it from like a music mastering standpoint, it's like, let's get this as loud as humanly possible so that when it comes on the radio, it's louder than the last thing. It's you're having, they equating loudness with fun.
Right. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I like to think that audiences are maturing, and as we settle into the OTT and streaming worlds and cord cutting and lifestyle, that we are I don't know, a little bit more nuanced in our tastes and perhaps not so welcoming of invasive and super loud content. That's a super interesting.
No, I was going to say, I think a way around this. I've actually put a lot of time thinking about this. And I think if we go back to telling our advertising more like we tell our narrative. So, when we hear that wall of sound, it really just tells us that tells many of us that we can just check out.
Right.
But if we have an ad that is pushing and pulling dynamics, that is telling a clear story, not just, telling us about a product, but telling a story around the product, very often people are going to engage much more. Like when, you can show so much of, your brand through that type of storytelling too. And that's part of your sonic narrative as well. That's part of your sonic identity. It's making the entire way you portray yourself through sound as being something that is deeply connecting. So anyway.
Absolutely. No, I mean, that comes to mind. Actually a PSE client, a brand, Chewy, who's their pet supply company. They are kind of known for this aesthetic they've put out there with their ads, where they're not really I'm sure they have some short form, like, here, get your, dog food from Chewy, but they do these kind of 5-minute mini stories that are fully narrative driven, like cinematic quality, full sound design. And they're designed to pull at your heartstrings and connect you with the feeling of, they're a brand that, supplies you with something, but at the end of the day, the reason they exist is so that you can connect with your dog or your cat or whatever, what have you. And the concept of, the way that this content is created is designed to create an emotional reaction, rather than to just yell, force your eyelids open and yell in your face that, we have dog food.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And it's standing out, right? It's like, how many dog food products are out there? And look at the scope of what was created with, I mean, they had a Christmas time campaign, I believe it was. And across the forums, the sound forums, people are like, this is one of the best sounding ads they'd heard in a long time. And it's because of that. You're giving the ad room to breathe. You're telling a story. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. They're great. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of another concept you and I have talked about before.
Sure.
When you say with the loudness wars and people just trying to crank up the volume of their pieces, and it causes people to check out. So you talk about this concept of a sonic bounce rate. So you go to a website and you're like, oh, this isn't for me. And I click out, you've bounced off. So tell me about the sonic bounce rate and how that comes about and what can you do to avoid it?
Sure. So exactly like you said, bounce comes from a term in web, where somebody will arrive on your website, quickly discover that it's not for them, and they'll hit the back button or they'll navigate somewhere else. That's bounce. Very often in ads, we can actually be calculating and tallying the same information, right? So somebody listens to your ad spot. How quickly do they close the app that they might be listening to you through.
Yeah.
Say like Spotify, right? So how quickly are they listening and leaving? This also can be looked at through the visual crafts as well, but there's a different way of measuring this. But the best way to kind of look at this is like, we spend millions of dollars on these campaigns. We really want people to engage and invest time with us during that time. So how can we do that? A lot of user testing, a lot of A/B testing. Get back to the basics. Before we ever put the ad out, we should be running it through different focus groups, and really trying to put the money, put our money where our mouth is, and see if people will buy. Like, see how quickly if people want to lean in more and actually make a purchasing decision based on our audio, or if they listen and they've completely forgot.
Yeah.
So we can actually measure these things, and basically make sure that when we put something live, it's gonna convert. So yeah, so sonic bounce rate is something that I'm talking to a few other, I'll say, how can I say this? A few other companies that are actually tracking some of this information and reporting it back to me,
Yeah.
because I want to have a clear kind of guide as to what works and what doesn't. Kind of in this similar vein, I wrote about this recently in a blog, but things like putting car horns and sirens in your radio-based ads, great, right? Like, it immediately gets people's attention. But what happens when you're driving your car? Immediately you start looking in the mirrors, you start checking out things around you. These things absolutely grab attention, but how does it leave the customer feeling after they heard it and realize it's coming from you? Right. Immediately turned off from your brand, immediately kind of feeling cheated, maybe annoyed, maybe angry. They work, but they're such cheap tricks. We should just pull all those things from our libraries when it comes to radio-based ads. If you're going to do it in TV, God bless it, go for it. But I think we should put a line in the sand right now for radio spots. No more sirens, no more car horns.
It's good to know. That's good to know. So what if, you're talking a lot about really big campaigns,
Sure.
brands that are investing millions in ads. What can you do if you're a small company and maybe you're not even working with an agency? Maybe you're creating your own, or maybe you're not a small company, but you're a small team within this and you're trying something out and you don't have the benefit of, a branding agency, creative, and, soup to nuts and a huge budget for ad spend.
Sure.
You're creating this content yourself. What kind of best practices can you follow? I mean, I'm hearing no police sirens or car horns in radio ads, but maybe this radio ad is not on the menu for these folks.
Sure.
Yeah. So what can a smaller team do to leverage this, and what's like a rule of thumb, best practice for?
Sure.
Yeah.
Can start small. Like I mentioned at the beginning, if you're a retail spot or you have people coming into your business, make sure the environment sounds good. Make sure people feel relaxed or excited or whatever type of emotion you're trying to convey. You can do that through the sound of the space that the customer is walking into. So that's number one. Number two is, if you're going to shoot content, shoot it well, but record it even better. Lavalier mics hidden on the actors is huge. Have a good boom mic set up. Obviously, this isn't a boom mic, but have a good boom mic set up. Believable audio trumps everything else. Again, like, think of the last time you watched a movie. You're completely in the story, but then there's that one line of dialogue that either isn't quite in sync or maybe sounds a little different. You're immediately taken out. So having high quality audio is key. Next, using really good sound effects. This is not necessarily a direct pitch to you guys, but definitely having a really good library. You can get elements of libraries. You don't need to buy the entire library at once. So find sounds that work for you and just get those sounds. You don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. You can just make small micro purchases. So that's a massive help. And then again, like, just make sure that you spend time on the project. Put fade files, do little things that are going to prevent your audio from sounding weird when you push it to the public. And if you're going to look for music too, you don't need to use a library. There's plenty of people in your community that can make some amazing music. spend some time with them, like make the music with them, and then use that music in their ad. They're going to be so thrilled to be a part of something that you're creating. So there's a lot of little things you can do without spending a lot of money that really make a massive, massive difference. So I'd say, again, use good quality sound effects, record things well. Don't use sounds that are going to annoy your listener, and get good sounding music. Get music that is going to really connect to what your audience, is going to believe about you. Last thing is also know your customer persona. You'd be surprised to know how many small companies don't actually have a clear idea of who they're selling to. They cast a wide net hoping that it's going to land and they're going to pull in everyone. But reality is, all those people just kind of don't see you as for them. So being very specific and very deliberate about who you're speaking to, make choices that relate to that, that's really going to help solidify you in the market.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. And I think something I find myself saying a lot is just think about audio. Consider the way that your work should sound at the beginning.
Yeah.
We see time and time again teams that tell us, oh, we're not using a lot of sound effects because we don't have enough time. It's at the end. We ran out of budget. We ran out of time, and it's just, we slapped something together. And I think all of what you're talking about here with, the value of engaging with the audience, creating an emotional connection, really driving the narrative with sound and creating a memorable experience, right?
That's right.
You're not going to do that if you aren't thinking about sound until the very end.
Right.
So you have to, when you're storyboarding, when you're creating the outline or the script or whatever however you start this project, big or small, take into consideration, well, how do we want this thing to sound? Is it going to be kitschy? Is it going to be a loud in your face thing? Or is this going to be more nuanced, delicate, narrative driven?
Right.
And make sure that you have the resources to get there. Right.
Right.
So like you said, 1.1%, take 1% of your overall ad spend and put it towards sound, and you get a 23% additional ROAS. ROI, whatever.
It's wild. And when we're doing this, we're increasing lifetime value. We're actually bringing in higher profit margin, all these things. It's such a powerful tool. And exactly like you said, you were just talking about how sound is actually left to the end. Budget's been completely blown. We have nothing left. You get a feature film and somebody asks you if you can do the sound for it for $2,000, or you have a commercial where you're like, they're already telling you it's going to play at the Super Bowl. They ask if you can do it for $500, and it's like, where's the budget? So the reason why that's important, again, we all know the three-legged stool. We can have good, fast, or cheap, and very often people want it good and fast. Well, you can't get it cheap anymore. People in my world, as we cut down on time, what you're doing is cutting down on creativity. So by increasing the amount of spend you put into your ad, you're actually increasing the amount of creativity that's going to go into your ad. You're increasing the amount of time and consideration we get to put into it, the amount of back and forth to make sure that it's really hitting all the marks. Again, if we're just shrinking it down so sound is there to just decorate the picture, we're really not doing you justice. Yeah. So having more consideration, putting a little more time, putting a little more money, and more communication in the process, we can create things that just blow the doors off of any other ad in that space. Yeah. So whatever you're doing, think about sound. You're totally right.
Yeah. I had an interesting thought, and it's 2:25 p.m. on a Thursday, so this might come off as a little like stoned, if you will, but bear with me. I'm a sound geek. But I'm thinking about how sound is kind of this. You mentioned the ancient connection. Our 100,000 years ago, our ancestors in the grasslands, joining over song, right?
Right.
And relatively speaking, if you think about how things sound,
Right.
they're not that different than they were. It's not that different than they were, I don't know,
No.
a couple decades ago. Just
No.
the way the scope of how something can sound is limited by nature, and it is very primal and connected to like the deepest recesses of our brain. So when
Yep.
you think about that, and then you look at all the technology, the shiny VFX, CGI,
Right.
AI generated stuff, there's this, I get it. I totally get it. The temptation to create an absolute visual spectacle.
Right.
And then, you know, so, and then think about how much that costs. We're going to get pyrotechnics. We're going to get, you know, we're
Right.
going to do all this crazy stuff on a sound stage. We're going to take days to shoot this. And, you know, it's only a minute long. So we'll post the audio for in a
Yeah.
couple days, and it's whatever. Audio is just audio.
Right.
And I think that's where you get to this. That's how you get to the math of like take 1% of the budget and
Right.
put it on sound. Because you actually, the reality is sound is relatively simple. And there are so many people who are great at doing sound, and you can learn to be very, very good at sound if you pay attention to it and you take the time to focus on it.
Right.
But if you completely punt it, now you've got this huge disparity between what you're seeing on the screen and what you're hearing.
Yep.
That you start to get this sort of disconnect of like, oh, this looks a certain way, but it sounds like crap.
Right.
And then when people are looking away from the screen, there's nothing to drive to keep you engaged. Right.
Right. Right. Well, yeah. I mean, it starts with good narrative at the beginning, right? You're putting in a good story.
Yeah.
And then you're doing good visuals, right? You're investing in it, you're shooting it. And then when it comes to sound, yeah, like we connect, man, we connect. Like, when's the last time you went to a concert, a venue? Like, you know, go to the bowl. I was at a Fish concert years ago.
Now you're speaking my language, dude.
I'm not really a jam band guy, but like, oh my God, like this entire just swarm of people just all like rhythmically writhing together. It's because like when you just, it lets us stop thinking. It really does. Sound just, it lets us know if we're safe. It lets us know if we're in danger. It lets us know if we should just stop and like be still. All of these things. It's just such a powerful tool. It's one of the greatest things. I can't believe that we get to experience it in this life. It's just wild.
Yeah. Amen to that. Cool. Well, yeah, we got a few minutes left.
Sure.
I want to kind of close with this question.
Sure.
Like what is one thing that every team, brand, company can do today to better leverage sound as a storytelling tool?
Sure. So I would say, you know, truthfully, put somebody on your team in charge of a sound library. There's so many sounds. Like here in my home studio, I think I have something like 4 terabytes of sound. So getting through all of that content can be challenging. It can be hard. But if you have somebody in-house that's in charge of marketing, just have them flip through the sounds every so often. Find a library of sounds that's unique to them, that kind of really, really feels like it's a part of the brand, part of the company. And when you have those sounds that connect to the company, connect to each other, that make us feel, you can either use those sounds going forward as you start to move forward with a new campaign or invest more money in whatever part of the process you're in. Or you can send it to somebody like me, and we can actually take those sounds as templates and then build out fresh sounds that are completely unique to your brand. So that something you can do right now is just start going through a library, just like you'd go through a library with music, just like you'd spend time engaging with voice talent. All of these things are things we can do right now to prepare and really kind of start to see how cool sound really is. So that's what I'd say right now. Yeah.
Love it. It's fantastic. And hey, if you need a sound library, come talk to
Hey.
Got you covered. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Nice. Awesome. Well, yeah, let's wrap it up here. I feel like we could probably we might have to do a second episode of this sometime down the road, because I feel like we could talk about this stuff forever, but really appreciate you coming on and talking to me. We have a bunch of tips on how teams can sort of set themselves up for success with sound. We have a free guide. It's the ultimate sound workflow guide for teams. We'll put a link in the description here so you can go and download that, check it out. And we also have some great stuff available on the PSE blog. Recently got a facelift, a very beautiful facelift, thanks to our visual design and web teams. And we have a couple of posts written by Andy on the topic of the sound of your brand and how to leverage sound better. So yeah, that's it. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
See you soon.
Yeah.